BJ from Board Game Gumbo here with episode 21 of Gumbo Live. I've got Mike Ritchie and Grant Wilson of Rather Dashing Games. These guys have a new game. We've been hinting about it all night, Wakening Lair, and we're going to talk about it in just a second. I did read something that I think applies to this game. One of you guys said, our philosophy is if we aren't having fun, something is wrong, and we hope that translates into our fine products. Now, that's a long slogan. I think Steve, the name father, could probably shorten that up for you guys. But, of course, you already have a great slogan. But tell me about the background of Wakening Lair and how this thing came to life. The way I've heard it is, one of you guys described it as sort of RPG in a box in a board game, you know? So tell me, how did this come about?
All right. We have to go way back, but I'll be brief. When I was 14, I started playing D&D with Grant and some of our other friends, like a lot of people of my generation. I love D&D. Over the years, I've played many iterations of D&D, Pathfinder, World of Darkness, Rifts, and a whole bunch of other RPGs.
Gamma World?
I've played Gamma World. And I have a friend who's watching right now laughing because I was talking about Gamma World just the other day. And then we all grew up. And I still play Pathfinder. I still play D&D, but I don't always have time. And then we started to see things like, really cool things like Dungeons & Dragons board games come out. Started things like Descent and Massive Darkness and Gloomtown, all that kind of stuff. Shadows of Brimstone. These are great games. I love them. But they are $100.
And my Mansions of Madness box, I think, weighs 30 pounds now.
Yeah. Right. And I'm not panning.
You're talking about first edition, I guess, Grant?
Second.
Okay, the new one? Okay.
Keep the iPad in there and a charger.
So I'm not panning those games at all because I play them a lot and I love them. We both do.
Right.
So D&D's can take years to do a campaign, and you have to buy all these books and minis and stuff. And that's the granddaddy. And then you have these games like Descent and the D&D board games, which are in the middle. There's very little on the low, quick end that is truly a dungeon crawl. There's a lot of games out there that have dungeon theme.
Right.
Yeah. We who play the games now are adults, and we don't have that time, so we wanted something quick. And so we went looking for it as gamers, and we found a lot of people had cool mechanics, but they kind of crammed a dungeon theme onto it, and it didn't really feel like we were doing what the game promised. Like, I didn't feel like I was dungeon delving. Typically, they're competitive, so who can get the most gold out of the dungeon? Or
who can kill the most monsters to get back out?
And I'm like, that's not what we do. We're a team, and we go in together.
So this is kind of the game I've wanted to play since I was about 15 or 16. I wanted to scratch that classic dungeon itch, but I wanted to be able to do it in essentially a smaller card/board game. Not to be competitive necessarily with the granddaddies and the big games in the industry, but to kind of create its own little subgenre.
Yeah, I get that. You know, I've got 3 of the 4 D&D games, and it's just missing that player connectivity, the RPG, the story element. Plus, my favorite thing about D&D is creating the character and then watching your character grow, right?
Yeah.
And in the D&D games, it's almost impossible to get to level 2. I mean, you got to roll a 20 on a certain aspect. So when I saw Delve came out, Indie Boards and Cards, a company I like, I've done some work for them in the past. And when I saw Delve came out, I said, oh, here it is. Different characters. We're going to dive into the dungeon. And it's a fantastic game, but it's Carcassonne with the fantasy theme, you know, which is okay. I like Carcassonne. In fact, I'd rather play Delve than play Carcassonne. So when I saw Wakening Lair, go ahead.
That's what we mean is they're not quite that feel. So instead of starting with a mechanic and trying to put a theme on it, Mike started with what we knew and loved and boiled that sucker down into a nice rich syrup. So it scratches every itch, you know. I feel, that there isn't necessarily a narrative, but as you play the game, each game is unique, and so it creates a narrative itself.
Yeah. And that's the thing, and it's a half-hour to 40-minute experience. So obviously, you're not going to be, getting these guys to level 20 like in D&D and stuff. But even the characters, this is a home print version, so bear that in mind. So try and get the glare off. There we go. Yep.
Oh, nice.
So there's a character. You've got
that's art from Grant Wilson. Is that right?
This is art from Grant Wilson, and so this is our monk. There we go.
There you go.
And you've got the hit points running down the center. You've got abilities. You've got a bunch of archetypes. There's more information on this card than we'll, lead on right now. But the great thing about this game, especially considering now more than ever, families and women are picking up RPG games, every side has a male and a female version.
Of the same exact.
Other than that, the character is the same.
I like that.
So you build this character by adding treasure cards.
Sure.
Oops, sorry. There you go. Off to the left and off to the right.
So your character does level up, not numerically, but he levels up by getting weapons. And sometimes a weapon, we've got a system in there that everybody can use a weapon, but the more it is fit to you, the better you can use it, the more strong it is. So everyone, let's say your character has has a base attack of, let's say, fire, like you're just good at fire, but you get a sword that doesn't match that. You can still use it, but as the better the weapon matches you, the more dice you can roll. But I don't want to get too mechanical here, but Wakening Lair it's just fun. The whole concept is that you and your town, there's outside of town, there's been this lair that's been asleep and hasn't caused them trouble for a while, but now it's stirring. And you get together with your buddies and you go in there to try to wipe out whatever's in there before it gets out and destroys your town. So if it's stirring and half asleep, we got a better chance. And so what we do is we lay out 12 dungeon cards in a row, and we move through this dungeon. We roll 2 dice, and whatever number that adds up to, that's the room that opens, and it tells us how many enemies are in that room that'll wake up. And so we move through the room, we have actions, and we kill guys, we get treasure, we level up, and at some point in the game, in the monster deck, there is a card that says the monstrous terror awakens. And in the last room of the dungeon, there are bigger cards. So here's your typical.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah, so you got the monster terror awakens. But your typical bad guy, where's your bad guy?
Got some bad guys right here.
And Dave wants to hear all about how this combat's going to work. So,
okay, we'll get into that.
Checking in.
So here's a wraith. Okay, whoa, scary. But then what
you looking for?
One of these guys.
Okay.
So like when the monstrous terror awakens, boom, he's bigger and he's badder.
Okay. And they're all very
different.
Very different. And they all play really different.
There are 6 of them, and they all create a totally different experience. So when he wakes up, at the end of every player's turn, he's going to move a room towards the exit. And if there are any minions monsters still alive in the room, he drags them with him. And you can't attack him until you kill the minions.
Nice.
And he can't attack you until the minions. So the minions are doing the dirty work.
Yeah, it makes thematic sense.
He's still moving and still moving. And if he gets out before you kill him, then we all lose. And if any one of us dies, we all lose.
And so everything is boiled down very small. Like there's traps. Traps will do bad things to you. And the traps are in the treasure deck. So you never know when they're coming up.
Sure.
There's just a lot of little things that are nods to all of the classic RPG stuff that everyone here loves. But the great thing is we've played this game extensively with complete non-dungeoneers, complete non-gamers, and they're immersed. My 6-year-old needs help with the math, obviously, because some of the actual mechanics are a little beyond him, but he asks to play at least once a week. And we've been playing with a test group in Massachusetts over Thanksgiving, and he comes out and he looks at the board because he's supposed to be in bed. He's like, "Oh, you guys are in trouble." And then this one guy he's like, "Okay, I'm going to go in." My 6-year-old's like, No, you're the healer. Do your job. So this is really approachable by a lot of people.
Well, I got to give you guys kudos. You posted a rule book already online, so if people want to check that out before it's going on Kickstarter, I guess.
No.
Oh, straight to retail. Okay. Yeah. Well, people can check out the rule book right now. And Mike, you're a man after my own heart. One of the mechanics you got in there, at least if I'm reading it right, I call it Mike loves the push your luck mechanic.
I do.
I do see it in a lot of your games. I've been checking out your rule books. Hey, that's one of my favorite mechanics in any game. So you caught my eye with that. So, but you guys haven't talked about it tonight. How does the push your luck mechanic work here in Awakening Lair?
Okay, so to talk more about that, we have to explain a couple things.
Chucking some dice, right? Come on, man.
Each room in the dungeon is there are 6 different types of damage in the game. So each room in the dungeon is a different type of room. So it might be a fire room or an ice room or a poison room. So if your character is in that room and your base attack, such as this mage, you can see does frost and fire, that's its preferred attack. So if the room matches that, you get a +1 to all your attacks. Now, monsters have weaknesses. So here's an ooze, and he's weak to frost. So if you attack him with frost damage and one of your hits is successful, you can press the attack. You can continue to attack him as the same action.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
I love it.
Cool stuff like that. Now, this is one of the coolest things about the game is there are 3 different category of heroes. So there are arcane, and that blue flask is their symbol.
Sure.
Okay? This is the wizard, so it has the wizard hat in it. You have the wanderers. So this is a bard.
Sure.
Sorry, I know it's blurry. That's a bard. So you have the green.
Yeah, we can see the little minstrel symbol there with the guitar, right?
Yep. Don't draw blurry.
And we have the, what are they, fighters? Warriors? What do we call them?
Fighters, I
I think we end up calling fighters. So this is the red shield is the fighter, and this is the monk, so he's got the hand.
Okay.
So if you look at, let's take Sesame the Enchanted here, okay? She's got fire. Her base attack is frost and fire. So when she comes out in the game, she's a newbie, and she looks like this. And when she attacks, she can either attack with frost or fire. And you attack with as many dice as there are icons. Right now, there's 1 frost icon, so I can roll 1 6-sided die to attack. Okay?
Yeah.
Or I can attack with frost. Now, as I get weapons, okay, when I kill a monster, I'll get a treasure. And the treasure is split in 2. On one side is a weapon, and on the other side is a magical item. You can either hold on to it and trade it later, or you can pick one or the other. So let's say I pick the weapon, I'll slide that under this side of my card. So now I have the weapon. If I pick the item, it goes on this side.
Oh.
I can only have one of each item, and here I can only have one of each type of weapon. So here I've equipped a fire sword. What's it called? Orc Scorcher. So now if you look, if I want to attack with fire, I can now attack with 1 die. And the sword here gives me another fire die. So if I want to attack with fire, I can attack with 2 dice.
I love that.
Now here is, because it's a sword and I'm a mage, I'm not as good at it as I'd like to be. So I don't get the class bonus. So if this symbol up here matched this symbol here, as far as the background, if it was a blue flask, such as this one, okay, I now get that other die as a bonus. Okay, so
Sure.
with this, I can only roll 2 fire. Now, if I was someone who was red and could roll fire, I could roll 3 whenever I attack with fire. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's good. That is good stuff.
Good job.
Yeah, it's so as you play, you kill a guy and you get a weapon that might not be best for you, but it might be better for another player. And this game has been designed
Traded.
so that
trade.
you have to work together.
If you don't
I
work
like it.
as a
You
team,
will fail.
chances are you will wipe.
You will
You'll wipe
absolutely
out.
wipe. And there are some treasures in there, like there's a scroll of resurrection. So if someone dies, it doesn't matter who has it, you can cast it and bring that person back to life.
BJ from Board Game Gumbo Live. I've got Mike and Grant from Rather Dashing Games. We're talking Wakening Lair. I saw on the website that it's 2 to 6 players, but when does it come out? I didn't see it on the website. What are we talking about? And what's the price point of this game?
We don't have an exact street date, but it's going to be the 3rd to 4th week in March of this coming year. So it's not too far along. It is that 2 to 6 player, fully cooperative, and the retail price is going to be $34.99.
Okay. And you don't have the street date out yet, though, right?
third or fourth week in March. Like, we know that.
Maureen, that's the questions, and we have to make Maureen happy. You know that, right?
Yes. Oh, how? Yes, we do.
Yeah, it comes in a box about the size of a
Merriam-Webster dictionary.
No, of a good book, and it's got the magnetic clasp, and it opens up.
Oh.
And when it opens up, it looks like a book, and when it opens up, on the inside cover are all the characters and their little tiny backstory. So you kind of get the hint that the barbarians are from the Frost North, the North.
And also a couple of strategic tips of, oh, that treasure pairs well with this hero.
Sure. But right away, you're putting players into the theme that this is not just going to be grok and numbers. This is going to be RPG in a box, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you don't create your characters, but there are 9 different heroes, male and female. There are 2 of each monster, and there are 12 different monsters you can fight, and they're all different.
24 treasure cards.
24 different combinations of weapons and items, and no 2 weapons are the same. They're all unique.
And then you got all these 6 bad boys coming at you.
And then the 12 dungeons are randomly placed, the dungeon tiles. So the replayability is high.
Yeah. And it sounds expandable for not easy. I don't mean easy from a design standpoint. I mean easy as a plug and play. It sounds like you guys could, if you wanted to, give the Gumbo Live a scoop, about expansions.
Well, here's the thing with expansions. As a designer, if the game is the type of game that could be expanded upon, I try to build that into in the initial mechanics, so I don't one day wake up, go, I need an expansion, and I have no idea what to do. So do we have ideas? We have some great ideas for expansions. If the sales warrant it, we will make expansions.
We'll be ready. But we do have promos that go with it if you pre-order it or get it through your
friendly local game store.
If you get it through your local game store instead of online, you get 2 cards. You get a new treasure card, which is the name's changed so much.
The Mystic Ward.
Mystic Ward. So it's this seal that will keep the monster in the room for 1 turn, so you won't advance that turn.
And that is way more useful than it sounds.
Very
just
powerful.
To having not played the game.
And then there's one that is an enemy, a monster that is a doppelganger. So when he comes into play, you actually pull another hero that's not being used and put him in play, and you have to defeat him.
Steve O'Rourke checking in says, hey, One Deck Dungeon tried to do something similar, but it felt like a solitaire accounting game more than role-playing. The fun was incidental rather than essential. In his opinion, Wakening Lair sounds like it might better capture what I love about D&D. Isn't that what you guys have been talking about, right?
Thank you.
That's exactly what we're trying to do, and we hope we don't disappoint.
Hire that guy.
We want to share this with we want to share this with people because everyone who plays it, D&D, RPG player or not, has loved it. We had a friend of ours never played anything RPG, barely played board games, and we got him playing this, and it just so happened that his character was the most poised to do the most damage to the monster, the Awakening Terror, Monstrous Terror when he came out. And so we just loaded him up, and we all kind of buffed him and had him going, and he killed the dragon in the second to last room. And he said that when he got back to his room, we were on a trip, so he went back to his hotel room to his wife and woke her up. He was like, I killed the dragon, I killed the dragon. And then over the next few days of that trip, the stories are going back and forth. That's one of the things we love about RPGs is when it's over, you've banded together through trial and you have these stories, and we still talk about the games.
Yeah, what's more fun, the game or the after game, right?
Exactly, and that's the thing. That's where myth comes from. Is people sitting around the campfire, so to speak, drinking their ale and talking about deeds done and deeds not done, and that is where myth and legend comes from. And I really feel that RPGs, everything from our small card game all the way up to the granddaddies like Dungeons and Dragons, I think they scratch that cultural itch that lies deep in all of our little tribal piece of our mind.
Very deep, very deep. Hey, I think we sold a game tonight.
Yeah.
Gumbo Live, right here in Gumbo Live. Sarah Hansen-Briner says the boys are excited. Her boys are ready to play it now.
Yeah, all right. It's really good.
But Mark wants to know, hey, are you guys going to make any special play mats or cool promos for Wakening Lair? You did mention about the promos at the friendly local game stores, so I think we covered that. He loves to pimp his games, as we all know.
As do I.
What about special play mats?
You've got to let the game. You got to see if the game has a life of its own. We have all that pretty much ready to go. It's about is there the need? So we have to wait for the demand before we can supply.
So I mean, even
I see twinkles in your eyes already there, Mike.
Like I said, the stuff exists in our brains and in our notebooks and computers, but
we love it.
But I think even X-Wing didn't have a playmat for a year or so. Sure. So I mean, we have to make sure that it warrants that.
Look, I interview a lot of guys, and you guys are very passionate, not just about games, but about gaming. I mean, it's shining through right here, even on the internet. So I want to tell you that. Hey, Steve O'Rourke, who I already told you should hire, he says your expansions could be like those old school D&D modules, right? Like GM01, Grant, Mike, module 01, GM02.
Hey, James, an acronym for TSR or something.
James Castellano says, Grant and Mike, don't ever grow up. Don't ever grow up.
Man,
you guys are awesome.
No plans on it.
Big Jim.
All right.
We could. I'd like to. Do we have a second?
Yeah, sure.
I don't know where he's going with this.
I kind of want to give a taste of what the Monsters Terrors are like.
Oh, nice.
Because there are 6 of them and they all suck. They all want you dead. So let's see, for example, let's start with, here's Soulbane, okay? He's our Lich, okay? So when he comes out, any of the
wraiths or skeletons
that were in the game come into the room. He brings them back into the game, and they're there with him. So you have to kill them first. But after your attacks, he then rolls a die and heals them. Right? So now you see these different sections. These are different wound zones. So we have to roll a 5 or better to hit him, and we can press the attack until we fill one of those up. Then we'll take another action to attack one more. But if he has no minions in the room, he still heals, right?
Yep.
So if the minions aren't there, he's still going to heal. So he's tricky like that, and he's immune to frost damage, but he's weak to. You can only press if you have holy. So that's what he's
while you're talking about that, Grant, Dave wants to know, is there a downside to pressing the attack? What is the push your luck?
Oh, okay. So pressing the attack is not really the push your luck. It's if you are essentially expected to do it, you can. The press your luck aspect comes more so when you're in a room with a bunch of monsters. So you have 3 actions on your turn, and movement and attacks and all your special abilities, a lot of that counts as an action. If I end my actions in a room where there are still monsters, they will in turn attack me.
Even like the ranger. So the ranger can attack from monsters in adjacent rooms. So I can attack monsters in this room or that one. But if I don't kill them, I tick them off and they move into my room and attack me.
So do you want to spend all of your actions? Do you want to spend all of your actions, or do you want to get out of there?
That is just evil.
And the character things are. Their abilities are amazing. There's the barbarian. So the barbarian, every time he gets wounded, I gotta find him. He's great. Every time he gets wounded, okay. So if he has a wound mark, you can see he's easier to wound, and then he gets harder to wound
because he's angry.
A 2 or more takes that point away. 3 or more takes that point. But there's a sweet spot. So for every damage he's taken, he gets an effect marker, which allows him to change a die roll. So the more wounded he is, the more he can affect his roll, the stronger and tougher he becomes.
He's Hulk. So
we fit these characters in. Like here's a monk. When he rolls his dice, he can assign them in any order to any monster in the room, like a flurry of blows.
So again, there's that that heavily boiled down RPG style.
Yeah, but Mike, you've been chiming in as Grant's been showing these cards. Every time he talks about a mechanic, you're quick to point out how it relates to the actual card. It looks to me like mechanics are important, but the theme behind the mechanic is important to you.
Absolutely. Again, I said one of the things we've been wanting to do is create a game that scratches that itch for all of us kind of old school gamers, but also, again, with his kids, which are upper teens. My child, who's 7, people that have never run a dungeon or killed a dragon in their life. It's so I'm going to kind of diverge a little. Like, I like how you said gateway games at the beginning. We're starting to get away from the term filler game, and I'm really glad we are. These games are not filler because filler games you play in between other games. So-called filler games are starting to take up the whole night, and I'm okay with gateway games and, like you said, gateway plus games because we are seeing a huge renaissance of gameplay in the United States, and it's only going to get better. And
I agree.
Are we going to And there are people out there doing the $100 games extraordinarily well. And there are people doing the $15 and $20 games extraordinarily well. But the games that run the $25 to $40 price point that are just as immersive and provide. So what we're trying to do is give you a $35 game with a $95 theme and immersion.
Hey, you know, I think we're on the cusp. I don't think, you know, they're always talking about the boom or the bust. I think we're on the cusp. I hang out on this Facebook page, Gateway Games and Filler Games. It's run by a guy named Chuck Yeager. And almost every day, a new person joins it. What's that? Yeah, the Chuck Yeager.
Wow.
when he's not flying around the world. But almost every day, someone comes up with a question like, hey, I just bought this cool new game called Catan. What do you think? And I don't laugh at those questions. I love those questions. You know why? Because companies like Rather Dashing that makes games that are Gateway Plus or next level, you guys are the natural next step for those people that have played Carcassonne or Catan are going, wait, there's more? There's more out there? Yeah, in 5 minutes, I'm going to teach you a game. And in 35 minutes, you're going to want to play it again and again and again and fill up the whole night, right?
Yes, exactly. We've built our company on a set of pillars that we won't shake from. And we found that really
it's helped us.
It really has helped. Like we don't make any games with player elimination unless it's like less than 5 minutes.
Hate it.
We don't use score pads and stuff. There's always a more creative way to keep score.
I don't like score pads.
we don't like solitaire. I don't want to sit down at a table with 4 of my friends and we're all playing the same game, but we're not interacting. We're all kind of playing our own little game.
Sure.
So there are more, but you know, we want people to feel like one of ours is lore. We want our games to have more than just face value. You know, we don't want just blue and red cubes. We want a story. We want the mechanics and story to match.
Right, where those blue and red cubes mean something.
Yeah.
So, and the other thing was getting, like I said earlier in our discussion, was getting more and more women into gaming, and it's awesome. And something Grant does very well, and we said that lore is important to us. Now, a lot of times, and I don't want to throw anyone under the bus, but for a long time, it's like, sure, we'll put women in a fantasy setting. We've got chainmail bikinis galore. And we've tried to go in the different direction, and Grant's art really lends to that. So you see, we have a lot of...
She's strong, and she's clothed.
A lot of women that are extremely strong characters.
That's our bard.
And there's our ranger. And here's our paladin.
I think I ran into her at Circle K.
Yeah, I think you ran away. We got. Oh, sorry, that's a dude. We've got witches, and so
that blending of lore is also for us. That blending of lore and mechanics is also something we try to tie into where the culture of gaming is going, and we think the culture of gaming is going towards equality even faster than the rest of our society.
Yeah.